The United States presidency has been thrown into turmoil Friday after President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania tested positive for the COVID-19 coronavirus. This follows news on Thursday that a top advisor, Hope Hicks, who spent a lot of time in close proximity to the president, also tested positive. President Trump downplayed the severity and impact of coronavirus and being resistant to wearing masks. Well, the White House says that he's experiencing mild symptoms and his diagnosis will not have a lasting impact.
Other heads of state have had it. Britain, Brazil, other places. I am told it's a rather light case. He will be following doctor's orders. Dr. Sean Conley, who's the best in the business. I don't think it's going to have an effect. I think that the president will abide by whatever guidelines the doctors tell him. I am told he's a rather light case right now. I spoke to him last evening. I have not spoken to him today, although through the chief we're getting tasks coming down from the president, so clearly he's doing okay. And I think this will be over before long. That's what I hope and pray. And I don't think it has any lasting impact.
Well, whilst the US president's positive coronavirus diagnosis may put a spanner in the works in relation to the planned election debates in the US, Africa has a vested interest in who ends up in the White House and leading one of the most powerful nations on the globe. Earlier this week, the two candidates, President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, went head-to-head in a televised debate. Well, if you can call it that. Former Vice President Joe Biden has tested negative for the virus. Well, to talk to us a little bit about why perhaps we should be paying attention to this election and the outcome, and maybe listening to the debates, if they do play out, the rest of them. We're now joined by two international relations experts, Dr. David Monyae, who's here in South Africa, and Dr. Innocent Badasu, who's in Ghana, to discuss the impact of a continued Trump presidency on the continent, or alternatively, a return to a Democrat, Joe Biden, taking up the presidency. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to both of you. Let me start with you, Prof. Monyae. I just wonder your immediate thoughts about Donald Trump testing positive before we start talking about the elections. He'd been talking a certain kind of talk, and for him to test positive, your thoughts about what's playing out?
Thank you very much. I think this has to do with the lack of a coherent strategy that he has demonstrated throughout the coronavirus crisis. And more importantly, his sheer lack of consideration and going to campaigns and meeting a lot of people, and all the kind of signs that he has been pushing. And this man does not really understand the severity of this disease, nor does he consider the implication it has on the markets, the implication it has in the world, given the fact that the United States remains the most powerful country, and therefore whatever happens in the United States has huge implication to the entire world, including our own continent, Africa.
All right, Dr. Badasu, let me come to you with the same question, because in many ways, how he's managed the coronavirus and how he's managed the optics there too gives us clues perhaps as the kind of president that Africa can expect should he win re-election.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a surprising news to see the president to tweet about his COVID-19 status. What that means is that the COVID-19 is still with us. There is the need for a concerted global effort to be able to fight this pandemic. It is important that global leaders do not take this for granted, and then also citizens alike are able to galvanize the needed energy that is required to be able to adhere to the needed safety protocols to be able to deal with the pandemic. Having said that, I think it's an important issue that has come up now, and we need to look at it critically. And some are beginning to argue that the fallout from the last debate has made the president to kind of use this as a mechanism to buy some social support, which would also show up his political chances. Early days yet, we have no idea how this would end up, how the Democrats will react to it going forward. And so my initial thought would be that probably the handlers of President Trump are making an effort to put their last game on the table to be able to win the elections coming next month.
All right. Okay, let's move away from his coronavirus test and go back to Tuesday night, Wednesday morning for us in Africa and those debates. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Badasu. We were supposed to pay attention, I guess, as a continent, because even if they didn't specifically talk about Africa, it does give us a lens as to the kind of person that we would be dealing with in the next 4 years. It was a lot of noise, so I don't know if we learned anything on Tuesday night about what we can expect going forward. Your thoughts about the debate, and if it gave us any clues about what Africa can expect for 4 years.
Yes, I would say it was an interesting debate. People have their own views about it, but one of the strategies of going into a debate is also for you to be able to prevent your opponent from saying the nice things that would appeal, that would attract the electorate. And so for me, somehow, in as much as we had all kinds of noises and interruptions in the debate, it was also politically calculated to prevent whoever may have a better story to tell, not to be able to tell that story to the American people and the rest of the world. And so beyond the noise, what is important also, we have to ensure that we look at this election purely from the domestic context of the U.S. Primarily, Americans will be voting for an American president, whether Joe Biden or re-electing President Trump. And so for Africa, of course, we should be interested. It would give us an insight, an idea of these individuals. We get to know their temperament. We have an idea about the kind of philosophy, the philosophical approach that would be adopted around national security, foreign policy considerations. And talking about foreign policy considerations, we are also talking about external financial assistance that will be coming from the U.S. So it's important. While these things may not have been articulated clearly, sometimes we can also deduce from the body language as to who is likely to return to Africa and do a better job on the continent.
All right. Dr. Monyae, let me turn to you. Did you get any insights from the debate in terms of maybe the temperament of the two candidates and which one would be better suited as an international diplomat? And I suppose both of them have had their time in the White House, so they've given us a glimpse already if their record is to be looked at. So let's look at the records and also perhaps what you saw on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning.
I think the starting point is that as much as I agree with my colleague, there's one thing that makes these elections, 2020, different from all other elections, and particularly the presidential debates. It's increasingly showing United States becoming a deformed democracy to start with. It has always been a house on top of the hill, the light, championing democracy, is the largest economy. I think for us, other than our own direct economic interest to the United States, it also has almost 10 to up to 15% of African American that constitute part of the African diaspora, which is the 6th region of the continent itself. And therefore, what's happening in the United States has a direct implication on our continent and our people. And therefore, we need to follow as a leading democracy. And as it stands, and particularly these elections, it appears as if the United States has to learn from us instead of us learning from them. But looking at the two candidates, one would say under these worse-off conditions, Biden stands as someone who at least might put the train back on the rail.
All right, Dr. Monyae and Dr. Badasu, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and Joe Biden and their records. And so we found an interesting clip of a young Joe Biden back in the day. And I think he was testifying in Congress back in the day. And so we know what Donald Trump thinks about Africa. In fact, we were surprised he even couldn't find it on the map, but he didn't have very kind words about Africa. Joe Biden, it seems like this is a guy who's had years and years of activism and at one point was fighting hard for South Africa. Let's take a listen.
But I want to tell you something. What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaner regime. We have no loyalty to them. We have no loyalty to South Africa, to South Africans. And the fact of the matter is I listen to this rationale first of all. It is the leaders of South Africa and their people, black and white, who have the majority responsibility. They must rise to it. Well, they are rising to it. They're rising to it. The only thing left available to them with that repulsive, repugnant regime of Afrikaners there. And it's the only way they have. They've tried everything for the last 20 years. They begged, they borrowed, they crawled, and now they're taking up arms.
All right, so that was young Joe Biden there. Very passionate, very energetic, but I think his heart was always in the right place, Dr. Monyae. And maybe not so much the same energy, but one gets a sense that he still has the same passion about causes. And it could be that that could translate into causes in Africa.
Indeed, he has demonstrated to be pro the people, promoting democracy, human rights issues, and one will expect these issues and norms and values promoted by the United States to continue under his administration. And he's also someone that at least has a relationship with Africans, African Americans in his case. Having saved President Obama, and one would expect him to at least understand where the African continent is and African issues within multilateral, particularly United Nations and all other important structures. But having said all this, he will remain an American president. I don't think as an individual would change anything in terms of advancing African interests, but he won't be an outright racist as the current president.
All right, okay, we're going to take a quick break, gentlemen, and when we come back, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Badasu, and we'll start exploring America's influence on the continent over time. We know that the former colonial powers, their influence has continued for significant parts, especially in some of our Francophone and Anglophone countries. But America, what influence have they had, and what do they hope to have going forward? All of that still to come. Stay with us.